Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Uh, remembering it's a small animation, some of you may know, it's called the Duck Song. And I think Jill looks like she knows it. So in the duck song, a little duck waddles up to a lemonade stand and he says to the man, "Got any grapes?" And the lemonade man says, "No, I have lemonade." And the story goes on. The duck wanders away, keeps coming back, asking if the lemonade stand man has grapes, and the lemonade stand man gets increasingly furious until he says, "If you ask me about that again, I'm going to glue you to a tree." And so the next morning, the duck comes and he goes, "Got any glue?" And the lemonade man says, "No." And he says, "Oh, got any grapes?" So it results in the lemonade man laughing in the end, and he takes him to the store and buys him some grapes. And the duck has a grape and says, "No, but have you got any lemonade?" It's so the reason I think it came to me, I hadn't thought about it in a really long time, was my talks called, like, why do we do this thing and what's the point? This point of sitting. And I've been thinking a lot about, my practice. Why do I do this thing? Why do we do this thing of turning up week after week, even year after year, coming to the lemonade stand and basically say, "Have you got any grapes?" So there's something about that that really touched me. Um, and I was thinking about, why did I come, and as a younger person, I was, deeply inspired by heroes, superheroes, and Greek Greek heroes, and all sorts of heroes. And clearly needed a hero in my life. And my fantasy was, from sitting practice, that I would kind of go into, like Clark Kent, I'd go into the phone booth and turn around and come out with my knickers on over my trousers and be invulnerable. Um, but also, my fantasy was that I would feel like I finally belonged. I would feel that sense of belonging, which I didn't feel at all, really. So I realized, I had this incredible paradox of longing and yearning that was about both wanting to be fully human, to belong to the human race, and to be superhuman, and to not feel things anymore, not to be touched, to be invulnerable, and to have power, and not to be endlessly hurt by the world. Um, and for some very strange reason, I thought that sitting still might accomplish this for me. Um, and so as I wrote that, I felt really tender towards myself for setting this kind of really impossible task. And I think, my practice has been characterized by wonky thinking for a really long time. It's taken a long time to not think that practice is um, the key to belonging or the telephone box. And one of the things that kind of released me was to feel like it's actually nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with me. And it's nothing to do with my mind, although they're both intrinsic to the process. So I was kind of really curious. If you imagine that this practice that you give yourself often and so wholeheartedly to is on in some way nothing to do with you, is that like a relief or a disaster or both? And the quote that I sent through was from Flint, was, "We make our way through the teachings on our own experience in the faith that something is moving in us. Something might fall away and some things might blossom in its place, and everything stays exactly the same as everything always is, because it's already complete. It's always here and already complete. The lemonade stand has fresh lemon juice in it every day. And we go up to it and ask for grapes." And Joan Sutherland uses a lovely phrase which she says, we can't make ourselves liberated, we can't make ourselves awakened, but we can make ourselves fetchable. To be fetchable. So she says, what does it mean for each of us to be wholeheartedly part of this world? How do we fall willingly into the frightened, blasted, beautiful, tender world just as it is? Because as Peter Hershock formulates it in his wonderful study of Chan, it's not enough to see what Buddha nature is. You have to realize what Buddha nature does. And what Buddha nature does is show up as you. Your particular lemon stand. Your particular mind that keeps asking for grapes. It shows up as you, this thinking you, and the paradox of our practice and the challenge of our practice is to really embrace fully that nothing is missing and nothing is special and nothing more is required except to fully inhabit your own life exactly as it is. And in doing that, the limited, smaller self can begin to occupy what Joan Sutherland calls the binocular vision that our practice invites. I remember when Flint said big self can only be known, and I'd say lived through, small self. We only have this to know the world with. We only have this to know the Dharma with. We only have this to express our Buddha nature with. And it's always going to look like this. When my grandsons come round, we have a car track that you assemble, and it has little battery cars that go round and round it. And being competitive twins, I very carefully set up the track and slot it all together and put all the pieces together. And they spend their whole time wrecking it. So their way of playing with the track is to put things across it, to tear the cars off it, to knock it over with their feet as they're scrabbling around, The cars run just fine if you leave them alone. And I was watching them yesterday morning and we were doing that, and I was thinking, that their whole aim is to disrupt the cars, is like that's the game. And I think about our minds as being a bit like that, everything runs just fine. And then our crazy minds just get in there and knock things over. Or we ask for grapes. Um, Zenju Earthlyn Manuel, who's one of Flint's Dharma sisters, says it another way. She says, Buddhahood, awareness, awakening, and liberation are primordial, timeless, and inconceivable, and yet they manifest. The good news is we are made aware and awaken in the rising of thoughts, not in the cessation of thoughts. Yes, the very same thoughts that we work so hard to diminish or eliminate through meditation are reflections or manifestations that arise in our perfect minds as awareness, liberation, and awakening. Our thoughts are like the track and the little train. They're there. It works. It's only we who take up the fleeting thoughts and churn them for days or weeks or months, or give them concrete importance and meaning. we mess up the track. We want it to be another way. We snatch the cars off, we knock it over with our feet. It's okay to allow our minds to think, to race about. It's the nature of mind. That is what minds are going to do. It's what we do with those thoughts that brings suffering. When we turn our racing thoughts into action, we become impulsive, anxious, impatient, and intent on making a life made of what we think life is. If we waited 100 days to act on many of our thoughts, we would probably find ourselves in the stillness and awareness we push so hard to accomplish with meditation. If we waited 100 days, we'd find it to act on them. So it's that kind of like really being allowing ourselves to watch thoughts arising. When I just arrived and I was sitting with Lynn and Jill, I was feeling really warm and tender. And I said, "Oh, I'm just feeling you poppets." I was in the poppets too, us poppets, and I was thinking, if we had that kind of warm welcoming to our thoughts, oh, here you are, you crazy mind. Why on earth was I thinking of the duck song? Why have I got it playing in my head now? It's a really annoying little song that goes with it, which I won't persecute you with. But it's like, what would it feel like? Earthling Manual goes on to say, what would it feel like to climb down from the ladder of mastering meditation and to land on relief? A peaceful relationship with the mind. You don't have to stop and take a breath. You're already breathing. You don't have to stop and take a breath because you're already breathing. And the breath you're breathing is good enough. Whenever we're invited, and whenever I'm invited, to stop, I start fiddling with my mind or my breath or my posture or my, it's like, oh yeah, I can breathe more deeply, run through this little sort of panoply of faffing. And it's like, yeah, what would it be like? So that's the invitation. And the point is we keep sitting to notice how much we fiddle with our minds and our bodies to make things different. To have or to get or to deny or to hold on to or demand that our experience is different than it is. What's it like literally just to rest into the wonder of having a breathing body? When Suzuki Roshi says, to sit in kind of in harmony with the mountains and the rivers, it's to kind of like not see yourself as separate from life. Just to sit here with everything that's going on. The mountains have rocks falling off them, they have things growing on them, they have things, they're not, life is happening. The river rushes, dams, stops, gurgles, has things stuck in it. They have their life moving in them as we do. Our minds are our lives moving in us. And I'm often reminded, especially for me, that enlightenment is ego's biggest disappointment. Um, my ego really, 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 really wanted that something special. Really, really wanted that something special to happen. And more and more I realize that's not what's going to happen. That's not what actual liberation is. Liberation is being me, to be free to be me, with all my thoughts, all my worries, all my anxieties. Bruce Tifton, Already Free, says, in truth, there is a larger sense of self, a larger life that we could be living, if only we were able to drop our unconscious identification with this character and become curious about who we might be right now. What would it like this Monday morning, as the season's turning, this Monday morning, this you that's turned up, this me that's turned up? What would it be like to become curious about who we are right now? So I'm curious about that. I'm curious about this funny me that dredged up the duck song just as I sat down. I'm curious about this me that can feel the longing to be invulnerable, feel the longing to belong, and feel that with a certain kind of warmth and tenderness. So, there was a whole lot more I could say, but I don't want to. So, I think I'm going to stop there. And it would be lovely to meet with anybody who fancies speaking about what you're curious about. What would you be curious about this morning?